It is April 14th, 1865.
The night of the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln.
We are finally at Ford's Theater. That night is a Friday night, but it's also Good Friday. So the start of a religious holiday weekend, not a night, especially back then when a lot of people are going to the theater. And so the owner of Ford's Theater, John Ford, is not anticipating making a whole lot of money. However, about 10 o'clock that morning, he gets the note from the White House that the president and his friends are coming to the show. And when Ford reads the note, he knows that he can sell this. It is only 5 days out from the end of the war. Everybody in Washington is still really celebrating. They obviously want to celebrate with the president, and this is one of the few times Lincoln's been available in public to celebrate with. And so Ford puts the word out all over the city. He puts it in the newspapers, he hands out flyers, he tells everybody who will listen that the president is coming to the show that night, hoping to get a sellout crowd at Ford's. And he does. That's exactly what happens. He has to bring in extra chairs and benches to accommodate the overflow crowd that he's getting. He even decorates the balcony box above the stage. He puts a chair and a couch from his own front parlor in the balcony box. He decorates it with American flags and the Treasury flag in the middle. And then the portrait at the bottom is a portrait of George Washington. There actually is no presidential seal in 1865. That comes later. But the portrait of Washington lets you know this is the president's box. That's who goes here. Ford's Theater today has to make accommodations for modern technology and fire safety. So today it holds about 770 people. Back then, comfortably, it held about 1,200 people. But by showtime on that night, there are almost 1,800 people crammed into this teeny little theater. And everybody has paid to see the president. They have not paid to see the show, but the president isn't there. When the curtain goes up at 8 o'clock, the balcony box is empty.
President Lincoln will arrive at Ford's Theater about 8:30 p.m. He comes from the White House by carriage with his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, and their theater guest, Major Henry Rathbone, and his fiancée, Clara Harris. Now, by the time they arrive at Ford's Theater, the play has already begun. Lincoln's going to enter into the front doors of the theater and make his way to the second level, known back then as the dress circle, by using a circular staircase, which you can see at Ford's Theater today. As he reaches the second level, the dress circle, he starts to inch his way around the back of the theater. The play is in progress, so Lincoln is trying to sneak in unnoticed, but come on, he's 6'4", he's wearing the hat, and he is the guest that everyone's waiting for. As he's making his way around the back of the dress circle at Ford's Theater, the actor on stage is going to spot him and gesture to the orchestra. The orchestra will start to play Hail to the Chief. There's a big, huge standing ovation as Lincoln continues through the dress circle, through a yellow door, and into the president's box. Abraham Lincoln enters into this box. He gets right up to the edge of the box, takes off his hat, and he bows to the crowd. In that moment, everybody really thought they got what they paid for, a really good glimpse of President Abraham Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth is not inside the theater at this point. Booth had met with his conspirators one last time around 7 p.m. They had laid out the plan for this evening's events, and then John Wilkes Booth sort of casually makes his way over to Ford's Theater. Some accounts say that he was standing across the street watching them come in, while other accounts say that he was already sort of going to grab his horse to station his horse behind the theater.
He arrives in the back alley, which is called Baptist Alley. He leaves his horse
to a man named Ned Spangler. Spangler was a stagehand, but Spangler, having things to do, isn't going to want to stand around holding this horse. So Spangler will find a man named John Burroughs. They sometimes called him John Peanuts, a 14-year-old boy who worked at the theater.
Anybody want to guess what Peanuts sells? And forces Peanuts to stand there holding the horse. John Wilkes Booth goes into the theater. Now, Booth is familiar not only with the physical space of the theater, he's also familiar with this play. He's acted in both several times, and so he knows how things go. He gets there about 9 o'clock. The play is running a little behind, and he's got some time. He has decided to time his assassination for the funniest line in the play. His hope is that everyone in the audience will be laughing so hard that it will cover the sound of the gunshot. No one will hear it, and it'll help him to escape.
Booth eventually makes his way next door over to the Star Saloon, and he'll have himself one drink before exiting the Star Saloon and heading back to Ford's Theater. At this point, when John Wilkes Booth enters the theater, he follows the same path Lincoln had taken about 90 minutes earlier. He'll go into the front door, up the spiral stairs, and around the back of the dress circle. Many people would say they saw John Wilkes Booth coming through the theater that evening. He was a very famous man, a very well-known actor, and there's nothing really suspicious about an actor at a theater. As Booth's making his way around the dress circle, approaching the yellow door that leads to the president's box, he'll see a man sitting up against the wall, not blocking the door, but next to it. The man is Lincoln's valet, a man named Charles Forbes. His job is to essentially take messages for the president. Booth is seen handing him a small piece of paper. To this day, we still aren't sure what that piece of paper said. Maybe it was a message, it might have been a calling card, the kind that actors would have had. Either way, Forbes is not responsible for keeping people from entering the box. John Wilkes Booth is a famous man, and Booth is going to enter into that yellow door.
So John Wilkes Booth gets into the balcony box, shuts the door behind him very quietly, and then is going to jam the door shut with a piece of wood that he had hidden there earlier in that day.
It was a broken piece of a music stand. The theater was tossing it out basically for trash, but Booth would take that piece of wood and quietly wedge it between the wall and the yellow door. He'll stop when the wood is blocking that door. The door will now be jammed. No one will be able to follow Booth in from the audience. All that separates Booth from the president at this point is a single wooden door that has a hole drilled into it. Booth is going to wait. On stage, there's an actor. His name is Harry Hawk. He plays the American Cousin from the title of the play. Our American Cousin is a play sort of perfect for President Abraham Lincoln, about this kind of bumbling American who thinks he's inherited a fortune, goes to England, and all these gold-digging society ladies start throwing their daughters at Asa Trenchard, the character played by Harry Hawk. At this point in the play, though, it's been revealed that Trenchard is not an heir to any fortune, and he is now being upbraided for his lack of manners. And he's going to reply with what is considered the funniest line of the play.
Don't know the manners of good society, eh? Well, I guess I know enough to turn you inside out, old gal. You sock-dologizing old man-trap.
1,700 people roar with laughter. There's a huge response from the crowd. Harry Hawk is alone on stage, basking in the response. President Lincoln is seen leaning forward. It looks as though he's looking down into the orchestra pit or into the audience.
In the midst of the laughter, as everybody's laughing at the funny line, John Wilkes Booth walks up behind the president. And he's at point blank range. He is not gonna miss. He takes his single shot Derringer pistol and fires into the president's head. The .44 caliber bullet enters Lincoln's head. Lincoln sort of jerks to the right. He's laughing, and so he kind of makes a jerky movement at the last moment. The bullet enters behind his left ear, travels through his brain, and lodges behind his right eye. Lincoln is gonna then slump forward unconscious.
That is the beginning of the end. Lincoln does not regain consciousness. On the far end of the box is Major Henry Rathbone. He immediately realizes what's happened. He would say later he doesn't even hear the gunshot. He sees the smoke from the pistol and knows immediately that there's something wrong. As he leaps up, Booth is prepared to fight his way out. He also has a dagger in his hand, and he's going to take his arm and swing it towards Rathbone. At the last minute, Rathbone does what I think anyone would do. He throws his arm up to protect his face. Booth is going to stab him in the right elbow and rip the blade up to the shoulder. Rathbone is cut elbow to shoulder all the way to the bone. He's a strapping young man, but that is quite a wound.
John Wilkes Booth at this point needs to make his dramatic escape. Now, he is obviously not planning on going out the door. He's barred that shut. He is an actor. He's dramatic. Everything is done for maximum dramatic impact. John Wilkes Booth is going to leap from the balcony box onto the stage below.
It's about a 13-foot jump, but Booth is 26. He's athletic. He is confident in his ability to do this.
But two things change this equation. The first is, at the last moment, Henry Rathbone kind of gathers his strength and lunges at John Wilkes Booth. He catches the sort of hem of his jacket, throwing Booth off balance.
What he's not accounting for, though, is the decoration, that flag and picture frame on the front. As he jumps, his left leg's gonna get a little tangled and caught, and when he lands, he knows immediately that something's not right. We believe this is likely where he breaks his left leg. Most people in the audience have no idea what's going on. They're still reacting, psychologizing old man trap. And John Wilkes Booth, a very famous actor, appears.
Now, he's not feeling any pain. He's got the adrenaline and the whiskey running through him. He walks to the center of the stage, brandishes the bloody knife to show the crowd, and he yells, "Sic semper tyrannis!"
Latin, thus always to tyrants. It's the state motto of Virginia, which had been home to the capital of the Confederacy in Richmond, and it's a line that's often attributed to Brutus. So you see who John Wilkes Booth thinks he is, this man slaying the tyrant.
Some people then hear John Wilkes Booth yell that the South is avenged before he runs off the back of the stage, jumps on his waiting horse.
And ultimately, John Wilkes Booth will escape Washington, D.C. that night. This happens so quickly, nobody even thinks to stop him. There's one man in the audience, a man named John Stewart, who will try to run on top of the stairs, sort of leap onto the stage, but he'll be too late. All the actors, everyone backstage is so shocked, and Booth is wielding this bloody knife that he's able to sort of get everybody with the element of surprise. In the theater, it is chaos. The women in the box are screaming, "The president's been shot, help him, help him," and everybody tries to get to the box. The problem is the door is still jammed. So Rathbone, who is bleeding out, is gonna stagger towards the door. He's trying to remove the piece of wood, but all the doctors and men are trying to push the door in. So Rathbone calls out, "Step aside, stop touching the door," and he's able to get that piece of wood away so that the doctors can get to Lincoln. The first doctor to reach him is Dr. Charles Leal. Leal is an army surgeon who had bought a ticket really for the play, really just with the hope of seeing Lincoln, and now he's examining the unconscious body of the president.
Leal is, like everybody else, he has not heard the gunshot. And so because he's seen the bloody knife, Leal at first assumes this is a stabbing. And so he's going to search the president's body for a stab wound. Obviously, he doesn't find one. And eventually, in frustration, Dr. Leal puts his hand behind Lincoln's head. And when it comes away, he's got blood on it. And he realizes this is a shooting. And from where the bullet is, there's nothing he can do. There's nothing anybody can do. Lincoln is still breathing. He's still alive, but he's not going to be for very long.
It is not a matter of if. It is a matter of when. The president is not going to survive. And he can't die on the dirty floor of a theater, and he can't die on a carriage ride going back to the White House. So they need to find somewhere appropriate for the president to spend his final hours. Leal and several other men will carry President Lincoln out of the theater, and as they're exiting the theater, they start looking around. They have no idea where to take him. Next door is a tavern, the Star Saloon. That's worse than dying in a theater. They're looking at a house across the street. The door is locked, and then a 3-story red brick building known as the Peterson boarding house catches their attention. There's a man named Henry Safford. He has heard this commotion and has come out on the stair, and when he sees the president's body, he cries out,
"We have a room, bring him here."
So they'll carry the president into the Peterson boarding house directly across from Ford's Theater. They'll take President Lincoln down the hall and they'll lay him down in the back bedroom, propping him up with pillows to make him comfortable. At the Peterson boarding house, the doctors will conduct a full examination and indeed reaffirm that the president is going to die in a matter of hours.
Thank you for joining us as we tell the story of Lincoln's last day. Like everyone else, we are adjusting to this new physically distant normal that brings us all online. Our tours have always been name your own price, and if you want to support us now, you can become a patron on our Patreon page. This comes with many perks, one of which is early access to our podcast tour guide tell-all. This week's episode is all about Robert Todd Lincoln, the eldest son of Abraham Lincoln, who was there at his deathbed. Patrons will get this episode tonight. Otherwise, free episodes are released every Friday on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want the epilogue on what happens to John Wilkes Booth, Davy Harrell, Lewis Powell, George Atzerodt, Mary Surratt, and everyone else involved in Lincoln's assassination, come join us on the Lincoln Assassination walking tour next time you're in Washington, D.C. 155 years ago, April 14th, 1865, was President Abraham Lincoln's last day. He'll survive the night, lying diagonally on a bed that he's too tall to fit in the back room on the first floor of Peterson's boarding house. And at 7:22 a.m. on April 15th, President Lincoln will take his final breath. When American poet and Civil War nurse Walt Whitman hears of the assassination of President Lincoln, he writes,
"O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every wrack. The prize we sought is won.
The port is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring.
But oh heart, 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 oh the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead.